What's going on, everyone? It's the Reformation Keegan, and I am here with another longer comic review. Just a quick disclaimer, I am overcoming a cold. It is completely gone, but sometimes with a loss of the voice, you can have that hold on for quite a while. And my voice was lost for a few days, but I feel better now, and I'm raring to go, and I've been wanting to get this specific analysis done because I really enjoyed this story. And the story is in this rather heavy compendium, if you want to call it that. I don't really think it's a compendium, but it looks like one and presents itself as one. But this is Justice League, the World's Greatest Superheroes by Alex Ross and Paul Dini. So there's a couple different stories in here. There's Batman, there's Wonder Woman, and there's also Shazam Power of Hope, which I have read before and I absolutely love it. So if anybody wants a review on other comics and other characters, let me know. But I'm also solely focused on the Man of Steel. So again, written by Paul Dini and illustrated by Alex Ross, whom I believe is the greatest comic artist of all time. And Paul Dini is easily, subjectively in the top 10 for comic writers, in my opinion. So we're going to get to it rather quickly. I want to address the art. I want to address some themes that I picked up upon that I think every reader of this should know. So here's a good introduction to by Chip Kidd that's worth looking at later. But this is the original cover of Superman Peace on Earth by Alex Ross, and the art is absolutely immaculate. And I never had the chance to acquire this issue because I'm only 23 and this came out before I was born. But I would love to have a mint copy of Superman Peace on Earth. But this is the next best thing because you can read it and you don't have to worry about harming the content within it. So I'm not going to read this obviously, but I want to pinpoint a couple things, specifically the art. So if you look quickly, you have even at the beginning, beautiful landscape of a young Clark and John, and like this rural setting to me is absolutely beautiful, and it encapsulates Smallville, Kansas perfectly, because Clark obviously grows up in a rural area, and I think that the art is absolutely immaculate. So we'll go through a couple more just quickly. So like right here, just a beautiful illustration from Alex Ross here. And I've heard people complain that Alex Ross's art is too realistic for comics, and I don't agree with that because I think Alex Ross has such a unique pastel art style that exemplifies realism, and I think that most of the stories that he's drawn exemplify realism to its finest core. So even in here we have excuse me, we have Superman, and it just looks great because this is a really nice depiction of Clark, and you can see just the beautiful urban landscape that he draws. So we're gonna get on now to the actual contents of the book. Sorry for that cough, guys. I'm still recovering from illness, but I'm not contagious anymore, so that's a good thing. So I always have written notes because I like to improvise instead of read a whole script, because to me it comes across as very unnatural to do so. And when you're in English, when you read your conference papers, you can't read your entire paper, or at least you shouldn't, and you have to ad lib, for lack of a better term, and you have to improvise to your advantage. That's the strength that comes with pro wrestling, and that comes with also being an English major, is that you have to learn to improvise and go off bullet points and notes, which I think does help you in your communication going forward. Anyway, I want to discuss the themes of realism and the themes of social justice, specifically within Peace on Earth, because I think that they both encapsulate a lot of realities in past tense and also in present tense. And what I mean by that is, if you look at our past, there's a lot of implications within this story that reign true from then, but also reign true now. So if you look at the beginning, you have Superman being Superman, and you have John educating him on a lot of things, and you have John educating him on the future, and you can see that you have starvation as this main theme. And when Clark reaches adulthood, he sees that there's this woman, and she's a beggar, and she's starving, and she looks like she's about to die. We find out that her name's Jody from Dr. Mason, but Clark rescues her just from the goodness of his heart and brings her down to the shelter. And she ends up getting saved, and Clark is told that if it wasn't for Superman, that her life wouldn't have been saved. And she would have probably ended up dying. So that's just a moral implication going forward in the story. And then you have Superman going through this ongoing crisis between the right choice and the implications of making that right choice. And you can see this throughout a lot of heroes and heroines in comics and within literature, where they're making a correct choice, but it's not always the most popular decision to the grander public. And if we know anything about governance, it doesn't matter what the right choice is, does it? What really matters is what's best for the government and what's best for them going forward. And with Superman, he just naturally wants to make the right choice for everyone. So we can see this when, after he finds out that Jody was saved, he wants to solve world hunger. And world hunger is, again, an ongoing crisis that keeps occurring in our world. And he goes to U.S. Congress and asks if he can distribute food to various places that really need the nourishment, for lack of a better term. And they're initially very skeptical. They think that it can't be done, but they make the decision to do so because there's apparently a food surplus. And really, in America and even in Canada, there is a food surplus. The thing that there's not a surplus for is finances that can compensate to make that money. And it's because poverty is more of a crisis than world hunger, and poverty is the root of world hunger, especially within this story. And we can see that when Superman visits various places like war-torn Europe, and he sees the poverty on people's faces. And there's one person in war-torn Europe that asks if he's gonna return, because he's that symbol of hope that they need. And then we can see in other places that are occupied by military rule, they're grateful for the food, but for their own selfishness. And Superman finds out that selfishness can also be the root of all evil, and greed. So Superman's an alien. Even though he's called Superman, there's a man, Superman. But the thing is, he's more of a human being than any of these people negatively portrayed within Peace on Earth. And he's doing the moral thing by needing to give people this food in order for them to have adequate sustenance and survival. But a lot of military personnel within the story don't see that. And they think that it's going to cause war because people are going to fight over food. Superman doesn't believe that, though. He believes in giving everyone an equal amount of food in order for them not just to survive, but to thrive and to lead a healthy life. But people don't see this. They don't see the bigger picture. And that's the message that I think Paul Dini is sending here, is that human beings do not see the bigger picture of ongoing problems, and they don't look towards the future in a way to solve it. Because we have enough food for everybody. We can always garner food. But it's, again, the money that is causing the problem for this. And there's also major problems in production, and food production, that is, where we can give people food, and it's not going to end the entire world. But it's going to cost money. And that money means more than human deaths and the death rate going down. It's just a fact of life. But that's what Paul Dini is telling us throughout Peace on Earth. And the other thing that I wanted to mention too is that when he speaks to Congress, there's a lot of doubt. And that doubt is unfortunately emphasized in a way where it's not just that Superman can't do this, it's that he can, but there's going to be a large amount of rejection. And this is seen when he visits a certain area where he's trying to give food, and people shoot down the food out of spite and out of pure greed. And they shoot down the whole bag of food, and they're shooting at Superman knowing that they're not going to kill him. But if they can shoot the food down and they can poison the food, then nobody gets that food. And that is a prime example from Paul Dini on how selfishness and greed overtake everything and why human beings have not evolved. Human beings are very primitive creatures, and we have not evolved in the way that we thought we have. We are very hypocritical. We think that we are the most civilized of entities going on in the world, and really we're not, because we're not any better than animals. We are animals. And Superman sees this for himself because he looks like a human, but don't forget, Superman's from Krypton. He might be a different form of human, but he's alien to us. So his perceptions of morality are going to be a lot different than the average human being, and he has a very difficult time understanding and trying to fathom why human beings do not want to take something that is being given to them for a better future. And it's just logical sense, but what Paul Dini's really telling us is human beings lack logical sense, albeit for survival, albeit for selfish purposes. Our logic is very misconstrued, and that's what Peace on Earth is really telling us. And we can see towards the end where, sorry, I had to look at my notes because I wanted to get the quote correctly, where we have self-indulgence take over, and Clark, he knows he can't change what's happening in places like Africa or in war-torn Europe, but he just wants to help. But there's something that John tells him, and he ends up relaying this back at the conclusion, and it's that not every seed will make it, but they all deserve a chance to grow. That's basically what human beings are. So we're seeds, and we might not make it in any way, but we all deserve a chance. We all deserve a chance to survive. And that's, again, what Paul Dini is trying to bring forward. And, you know, the thing is poverty and world hunger are man-made. They really are. And because, like I said earlier in this video, we all have an opportunity to have food. It's just a matter of who's controlling that food, which is a very unfortunate aspect of humanity. And finally, just because a good deed is rejected, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it at all. And that is the main message of Superman Peace on Earth, is despite the pushback, even though he's doing something very, very nice and very, very productive, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it at all, which would be nihilism, where you believe that existence and life don't necessarily matter. And Paul Dini's diction, especially with the seed analogy, sums up everything that human beings need to know about world hunger, about poverty, and about the reasons why it occurs. And Superman is essentially the vessel that is showing what we all should be striving to do. So when you see somebody outside and they need money and you see that they're legitimately struggling, you give them a little bit to go get a coffee or to get a sandwich or something in that nature. Because if we have a little bit to give, it doesn't have to be everything, but if we have a little bit to give, that's going to help somebody survive. And those are little deeds that people will not forget. And it also shows how people in bigger positions do not necessarily understand the implications of poverty and the implications of world hunger. And because they've never really experienced it themselves. And Superman is somebody who can't experience hunger, as said in the book, per Paul Dini. So he feels like he doesn't necessarily relate, but that doesn't necessarily matter, because what he's doing is seeing an ongoing crisis for people that don't deserve to struggle. And he ends up getting a lot of flack for it, which is unfortunate, but also a very, very truthful depiction of humanity. And this whole story is based off of realism. And that's what comics need to do as well. Comics need to show realism and tell a realistic story to get an emotional effect out of their reader. And that is exactly what Alex Ross does in his illustrations and what Paul Dini does in his own perspective and through his diction. So let me know what you guys think of this little analysis. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and I will be back relatively soon. because I'm not just giving you a review and a plot summary, I'm giving you an analysis of the messages being conveyed. Thank you, and have a great day.